Today, we will be reviewing the ProTwentyT Expert Advisor by Mr. Mikita Kurnovich. Stick around to the end to see if this is a real EA worth your time or just another MQL5 scam. So we can start off here on the sales page to get an idea of how this bot works. And it seemed quite interesting to me because, first of all, the equity curve looked real, and there appears to be an actual strategy, at least from the description. So here it says that it is rapidly gaining the trust of traders due to reliability, and it uses the volatility of the Forex market and particularly the intra-session volatility. So as sessions kind of switch between Asia, London, and New York, there quite often is a lot of volatility as new markets open and new players enter the market, and this bot capitalizes on that. And that's actually quite an interesting approach, and time is one of the best things that you can build trading strategies based on, because it's really based on true fundamental drivers. Like, there is really a New York Open every day, there is a London Open, and there is a Tokyo Stock Exchange Open as well. And a lot of these drivers, along with the opens of the different futures markets, do create significant movements in all markets. So basing strategies around that is very much a tried and tested approach because there's actually something behind it. It's not just a bunch of random patterns which you can draw on a chart. So here it says looking for volatility spikes and is looking to trade declines when trading. Okay, so essentially perhaps some mean reverting, trying to look for a pullback from a volatility spike between session. And it also says that it uses filters to determine the best times to trade. And that all sounds good to me. And down here specifically, it also chats about that it uses a fixed stop loss, that there is a good stop loss take profit ratio, and it trades GBP USD on the H1 timeframe. And it's also interesting to note here that it doesn't require a ton of leverage nor minimum deposits, all of which are good signs because grid martingale high-risk systems usually require pretty significant leverage. So seeing that this one is not requiring that means that it might be following a more stable type of strategy. And there's also different filters, which he's calling intelligent filters. Okay, and here we can quickly flip through some of the back tests, and we're seeing a good equity curve, but also not an unrealistic equity curve. There are dips, and here like he's clearly scaling the trade as a percentage of balance, so this kind of like exponential growth does make sense with this type of equity curve. And he has a nice little visual here, but nothing too crazy. Now we can also pop over to his two live signals. I believe the first one here is the aggressive one, and we're seeing a very good, obviously like aggressive, he's probably just using high leverage, so the returns are quite good. Okay, it seems to have switched to Russian, but I can probably find my way around. And here we're seeing that there's not too many trades to date. So yeah, he's using relatively high leverage here. He deposited, I think it's $100, and he's trading with lot sizes of like 1.2 to 1.3. So clearly that's showing the high returns, but obviously he mentioned this. He said that this is an aggressive setting. The one thing I would note here is we don't really have enough data to conclude if this is a legitimate system yet. That being said, it is trading at a reasonably high frequency, so this would show that if we just kind of wait around and see, we should be able to get some more data. And now we can pop over to his other more conservative signal page, and we can see here that once again, there's just not that many trades. So it looks good, but realistically, you can't make up your mind with 3 trades yet. But from what I'm reading on the description page, it appears that he's put some good thought to this, and it's based on some intra-session volatility, which is probably a pretty good strategy. So here I've taken the liberty of downloading the EA and running a quick back test. And here we can see that from the graph, I deposited $10,000 and it's turned that to $10,342. So not a tremendous gain on the account. However, I have a feeling that's simply because it's using fixed lots. So you can toggle between fixed lots and dynamic lots. So if I were to change this to, let's say, a dynamic lot and 1%, we would likely see significantly greater returns. Okay, so I actually paused the video so I could play around with his dynamic lot sizing. And here we can see that I set this to 0.01, which I believe would be 1%. I had first set it to 1 and it completely blew the account. So you have to be very careful and perhaps ask the developer how his dynamic lot sizing calculation is working, because this is arguably a low number and it's still going at very high risk. So I'd be very careful about using this setting. And as you can see here, using this setting, it obviously created very, very significant returns, turning $10,000 into $200,000. That being said, we are using extremely high leverage here. So that would kind of demonstrate this. I don't think it's due to manipulation. It's just due to, if you use his dynamic lot sizing approach, it creates just very large trades. And if we go here into the back test as well, we can see around a 40% drawdown, which is pretty hefty. So it's nothing necessarily wrong with this. You should just be mindful of that when actually deciding what trade size you're going to use. And now to actually analyze the strategy, it's quite interesting in that it's running both longs and shorts, but it does appear to be indeed following more of an intra-session type of strategy. We can check when these things are actually trading. We can see it's very much time-based. So here it's 23, 23, they're closing here at 23, 23 o'clock, and it's closing in the morning. But a lot of them appear to be opening either at the beginning of different sessions. So that would make a lot of sense to me. So here, yes, 23 appears to be his favorite one. So right before that's at least one of the strategies is opening right at the end of New York session before the Asian session opens. And some of them also open maybe a little bit later at around 2 a.m. platform time or 1 a.m. platform time. So it does appear to be matching the strategy which he's saying. It looks more like a mean reverting setting, which happens at the close of different sessions. So that actually would make sense, because typically towards the end of the New York session, you enter more of a ranging period where you do see more like mean reverting price action. Makes sense, right? Like a lot of the additional push has already happened for the day. New York is going to bed, is going home in the evening. London is asleep, and Asia is yet to wake up. So price usually is moving fairly slowly at this point, and quite often mean reverting systems do work better. So here, we can also see that it has some properties similar to a night scalper, except it's using more like a night swing style trading where it's capturing larger moves, which is actually really interesting. So just kind of going through it again, we can see that yes, most of these trades are happening right at the end of New York session and before the start of Asian session. Perhaps some, maybe he has a filter or something where sometimes it delays the trade until a little bit later. Maybe it's spread based, but it seems to generally be following the same principle of it waits for essentially the end of New York session and it enters a trade in a mean reverting context. We can also quickly run a visual backtest now just to see maybe if we know what exact indicator he's using or price action strategy he's using to enter positions. But it doesn't seem to be showing any sort of indicators. So it's more of a price action based system. It's actually a very good sign in my opinion. And it indeed is using a take profit. Some of them, they all have stop losses and take profits. And yes, they're mostly all holding overnight. And it's roughly a 1-to-1 risk reward, not quite, but roughly. So yeah, it appears to be matching exactly what he says it's doing. So my takeaway, to not make this video too long, is it is matching his strategy. It's actually a very interesting strategy because it's a play on a night scalper, except it's more like a night swinger, for lack of a better word. And there is a real strategy here, so it's actually really interesting. I would be careful about the risk settings used. I think at least his dynamic position sizing function is quite risky, so be a little bit careful when using it. But this does indeed appear to be a real strategy, and it's definitely worth exploring and checking out. But I would always wait a little bit longer to see if the live signal matches the results we're seeing here in the backtest. Take care, guys.